by introducing Major Kojo Wachijan, retired.
Sorry.
Accra, 1962. And he's the executive chairman, New Guide Limited, a company that trades mainly in public policy management consulting, agri-business management, and policy books and periodicals publishing. He was the NDC parliamentary candidate for the 2016 national elections. Major Wachijan is a retired army officer and served as a military ruling council member in Ghana, June 4th to September 24th, 1979. Before then, he held other positions within the Army, including Assistant Director Public Relations, Operative, Research Analyst, and Staff Officer to the Director at the Military Intelligence Directorate, and Company Commander in the 5th Battalion of Infantry. In May 1981, he retired honorably on the rank of Major. He has a book out called To Duty, The Enforced Restoration of the Constitution of Ghana, and I urge you all to check it out. Major, you're welcome to the panel.
Thank you.
We have Wing Commander Patrick Nelson Sogwajo sitting next to Major Wachijan. Accra, 1963. He is a former board member of Achimota School and a former president of the Old Achimotas Association. A retired jet fighter pilot, Wing Commander Sogwajo voluntarily retired from the armed forces and was honorably released from the service in September 1983. Since then, he's been in business, working variously as Managing Director, Partners Limited Construction, Managing Director, Italonmex Aluminium Construction, Managing Director, Norcroft Mineral UK, dealer in mineral. Okay. You're welcome to the panel, Wing Commander, Accra. And the next panelist next to him, seated next to him, is Madame Rodeline Imoro Ayana. Accra, 1974. She is CEO of Royals Company Limited and Construction and Commodity Trading Company. She's a politician, a member of the Convention People's Party, CPP, and CPP Deputy Women's Organizer.
No. Former second national vice chairperson.
Ah, your CV said something else. She was former second national vice chairperson 2010 to 2014, yes. And coordinator for the CPP coordinator, yes, for the Labour Party UK 2010 to 2014. You're welcome to the panel, Accra. The next panelist really, truly needs no introduction. So you're thinking, so why don't you just skip it? No. Accra, Her Excellency Nana Konadu Agyeman Rawlings, Accra, 1966. Came into the political limelight when her husband became head of state in 1979 and has since contributed in no small measure to the body politic of Ghana. She set up and was president of the 31st December Women's Movement from 1982. She was elected first vice chairperson of the National Democratic Congress in 2009 during the second term of her National Democratic Congress party's tenure in office under President John Atta Mills, another Accra. She challenged Atta Mills for the party's flag bearership position at the party's Congress, which took place at Sunyani in the Brong-Ahafo region, and lost to him. But she is also being the flag bearer of her own party, the National Democratic Party, NDP. Welcome, Accra, Nana Konadu. So there you have it, our panelists. And so in the reverse order, I'm going to ask that Accra Nana Konadu Rawlings starts the ball rolling with her short submission.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator, fellow panelists, ladies and gentlemen, all Accra. I am indeed delighted to be part of this symposium. Our school emblem, black, white, and heart, and of course our motto, that all may be one, lie at the heart of what every ethnically diverse nation should strive for. Our customs, heritage, language, and traditions, although enriched in their diversity, put us clearly into distinct groups that identify or classify us into who we are, irrespective of our formal education, social standing, and upbringing. Ethnicity in our political development as a nation has had its ups and downs. If I may take a few steps back to the colonial era, into our independence in 1957, the British colonial government made a conscious effort with their British companies to create an ethnic, diverse, and tolerant atmosphere of the Gold Coast by allocating personnel in public and civil services, teachers, nurses, police, and others, strictly to areas that they did not hail from. If you worked with a British company such as the UAC, Olivant, Cadbury and Fry, Bartholomew, etc., for example, you were posted to Ashanti if you were a Ga or an Ewe, and to Accra if you were an Ashanti or from the north. It had to be anywhere other than where you hail from. This encouraged a healthy melange of all ethnic groups in the Gold Coast, which fostered understanding, tolerance, and appreciation, and raised an awareness of the various cultures that formed the Gold Coast territories. This policy also intensified intermarriages all around the country, and children were born symbolized, and the children born symbolized the Achimotan emblem of black, white, and heart. Mr. Chairman, the imposition of values and traditions of one ethnic group over the other was discouraged at that time, which invariably created a more cohesive colony. It was more cohesive for the British. Inasmuch as one could argue that this policy was just to ensure the creation of a workable colony for the British, it is also one of the factors that led to the birth of our cohesion, or our cohesive modern nation state. Independence introduced a new dimension, however, that sought to reignite divisive and sometimes dangerous nuances that occasionally hinted at a grand agenda to dislocate our national cohesion. Depending on who was in power, excuse me, the pointer would elevate one ethnic group above the other. Successive Republican constitutions tried to address this problem by entrenching it in the Constitution, making it mandatory for political parties to have a national character and outlook, as opposed to regional, ethnic, and local bias. 60 years after independence, the complete, the complete cohesion of all ethnic groups where equality is paramount continues to evade us. The last 8 years saw an intensification of myopic ethnocentric behavior of politicians in terms of political patronage and bias. This directly and indirectly manifested itself in the body politic of Ghana, created excessive corruption and poverty, destroying the livelihood of many people in Ghana. The erstwhile military regimes, though they had their own set of problems, ethnocentricity was not one of them. The military as an institution had always a good balance of all the ethnic groups at all levels. Officers, seniors, juniors, non-commissioned officers, etc. Ladies and gentlemen, Madam, I'm almost done. We cannot disregard the significance of ethnicity in our political development as a nation. If we take time to examine the root of our civil wars in the rest of Africa, it is clear that they stem from ethnicity. Let us not take for granted 60 years of existence of our nation state. This is a result of conscious effort, not only at government level, but among our citizenry to ensure ethnic cohesion devoid of stereotypes and bias. The reality we still have to work on, and so we have a lot of work to do. Ladies and gentlemen, indeed, ethnicity in our political development is on an ongoing process. Sometimes 2 steps forward, 4 steps back. Sometimes 1 step forward, 2 steps back. But be it as it may, there has to be a forward march in our journey, and the time will tell. We can achieve complete ethnic cohesion by celebrating our diversity in tandem with our patriotic values that make us Ghanaians. And to end it, let me just say that we take heed from Achimota's motto, strive for complete ethnic cohesion in Ghana. Let us strive to develop our nation devoid of ethnic bias and discrimination. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you very much.
Very much.
It's the turn of Accra, Rodlin.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and fellow Accras. I do not intend to read anything to you because I'm living testimony of what ethnicity means. 60 years and beyond, maybe things would have changed. But what I can say is that looking at myself, 1969, going into Achimota School, and my father happened to have had a political party, People's Action Party. If any of you can remember, it wasn't called People's Action Party. It was Pepini Ate Party. So I know that we've come a long way where ethnicity is concerned. And this was a Kusasi man from Boko who had gotten a political party, and the only 2 seats that he won in 1969 was in Nzema East and in Nzema West. He lost bitterly in the Upper East region. So I know exactly what it means to talk about ethnicity. And I remember when I was in school, one of the names that I had from my science master, Mr. Van Landerwyk, was Tamaleyensis septentenaria. That was my name, and that was supposed to be a species from Tamale. So if we're going to go back, maybe 40 years down the line, when I first entered school, I could just say that things have changed a great deal. There are a lot more northern people, there are a lot more minorities in Achimota School, for instance. And that, for me, is progress. Because now, at least, I know I meet a lot of Accras who are from the north. It's rather, for me, it's the other way around. I go to other schools, and I'm the only Accra in any northern gathering. But as a country, I think that ethnicity, even though most of us will think that it's an issue, for me, I think that it's the politicians that make it an issue. Because in our day-to-day lives, as we go around, as we talk to each other because of modernization, intersocial reaction and all that, we don't think of each other as any other tribe. But then when politicians come out and want the positions, when they want to be presidents, then they start to point fingers. I am from here, vote for me, I am from there. And that's how come people then start talking about coming from somewhere else. But for me, we are all the same people. Ethnicity is not something that we can all be proud of. So many things have contributed to it. Lack of education. Because if you look down the ladder, you find out that people who are educated do not normally talk so much about ethnicity. But it's always the uneducated who do not understand the dynamics of coexistence. And therefore, they always want to feel like they're superior to other people. It is pathetic to think that coming from the north, people always have this perception that probably another tribe is superior to someone from the north. I don't see it that way. I always say that you've got to believe in yourself. Colonialism did not treat us well. We did not get educated early enough, like the South did. And therefore, it takes time. Gradually, I think we are getting there. And therefore, as a people, for me, it is better for us to try and rather get together and explain situations instead of fueling the whole concept of ethnicity, of tribe. I come from a family where my brothers and sisters, I have Fantis, I have Ashantis, I have Gans, international. And it will surprise you that I went and stood for an election in my hometown, Boko Central. And it was a problem because I didn't know who I was. If you know Boko very well, you have the Kusasis and then you have the Mamprusis. One side is always MPP, that's the Mamprusi side. The Kusasis are predominantly NDC, and I was CPP. So, I just didn't know where I belonged. And then when you come to the tribes, my father is Kusasi, and people tell me he's Kusasi because of politics, but he's actually Mamprusi. My mother is Moshi. My grandmother is Busanga. So at the end of it, where do I go? I just didn't know where I belonged. Apart from the fact that I was CPP and not in one of the other two parties, I also didn't fit in very well. So at the end of the day, I realized that what was important was me, what I stood for, what they saw in me. And therefore, ethnicity is something that we must try to put aside by making people see us as who we are and what we are, and not to pin tags on us. This, for me, is very important and it's very crucial. It is sad that today, 60 years after independence, we should go to an election and then allow people to want to divide us along ethnic lines. When in actual fact, when you look at the history of probably families in this country, you will find every tribe in every family. You'll find a typical Ashanti home, and then you'll find, I keep saying, if you want to know the truth, just look at obituaries. You will find Akosua Wangara, Arab, and something Moshi there, sitting somewhere. But you think that that person will come and tell you that you're from the north, but there is a northern person out there. So ethnicity for me is not our problem. Our problem is illiteracy, poverty, and maybe the lack of political will for us to start things and get things done so that everywhere in this country would at least have their share of the resources that this country has to offer. Thank you.
Thank you. Akora Patsogbajo, your turn.
Thank you very much, Audrey, and thank all of you for coming this evening. Most probably I will start from the role Achimota Speaks played in trying to handle this ethnicity problem. I entered Achimota School in 1959, and I'm sure a lot of people here know I was born, bred, and lived in Kumasi. So I had more Ashanti outlook than where I come from in Adan. Pre-independence, there was a lot of turmoil in Ghana between the Matimeho and the CP group. And I was one of the gang leaders who packed dynamites, packed soda bottles, and supplied them to the warring factions. Well, I had to do it because I couldn't see my colleagues going to watch Zorro or Buster Crab and come to tell me how it was. I must also go to the cinema theater. But what always surprised me, that pre-independence, we didn't have this issue of you're a Dagomba, you're an Ashanti, you're a Fante, or you are this. It had died down. Those who know Kumasi very well, Adum is the center of Kumasi. And therefore, all the actions in the political warfare between the CPP and the Matun happened in Adum. So therefore, one would expect that people who live in Adum will not even talk to each other. It never happened. If we had to go out and shout or throw soda bottle, we did. When we finished, we came back and sat down and played our draft or played our marbles. No one hit anybody because you were from Adan or your Aigbe or Krobo. It didn't happen. And I think this thing carried on until maybe independence. And if you look at even the military, where I spent some time, I think Achimota School has a lot of effect in harmonization of tribes or ethnic grouping in the military. If you realize the first Ghanaian recruited or became officers, and senior ones, were products of Achimota School. And this goes to the fact that whereas Achimota put some effort on tribal drumming, and the reason for tribal drumming was to get together and know each person. And it goes back to our crest, or our song from Gabaga to Accra. So when it came to recruiting people into the military, don't forget, there were teachers who had joined the military like Otu, Aferi, Michelle, and they were the first breed of Ghanaian officers, and they helped a lot in the recruitment of soldiers. Hitherto it had been mainly from the north. And I think this thing they learned from Achimota School guided them. So when they were recruiting people in the military, they balanced it. I will still maintain it today that you don't have one faction more or less overriding the other faction. It's more or less balanced. When it came to promotions, people were promoted on what you could do. Then you were promoted. You are not promoted because you belong to the Everbrook or Krobo or Gan. Promotions were based on typically what you could do. And I think this is what we must thank Achimota School for doing. I'm not too sure whether King's College in Lagos is older than Achimota School or we are older.
We are older.
Because if we are older, then we'll think about when they were discussing the establishment of Achimota School, what might have gone into their heads in UK, that if they did, and this is the way we're going to select students. And if you go back, you will see that they selected certain students from royal houses all over the country. We have the Moru Igalas, Alasani, Tolona, then we had the Furiatas from Chebi, and of course we had Jemfi from the Ashanti, then the Magites and the Matikoles from Krobo. They were a little behind, but they're catching up. Therefore, one would expect that in recruitment, the North would have been more or less disadvantaged. But honestly, it didn't happen that way. After independence, if you go through our politics or what happened in this country, I believe that we had a fair balance of ethnic grouping in this country. No group more or less preceded the other one. But recent political pronouncements, I'm afraid, is going to get us into a danger sometime. If you get to know about, let's say, Nkrumah's government, Buzia's government, I only got to know today that they didn't have any parliamentary, any ministerial appointment for the North. Not because Busia didn't like, no, not for the North, from Volta region. Not because it didn't like Voltarians, but it was an issue. They were not in parliament, and Busia had to select all his ministers from parliament. So that issue doesn't stand anymore. But currently, we are facing a danger. The danger we are facing, our politics is beginning to ride around on ethnic lines. I'm an Ashanti, therefore I should be an NDC. I come from eastern part of, I'm a Krobo, I should be NDC. I'm Ewe, and this is not healthy. Because if you look at surrounding countries alongside our borders, things blow out of proportion because this is the way it begins. It begins this way, and it goes out all throughout, and if it's not solved, becomes a headache. So once more, I think we should give kudos to Achimota School for having or try to get us all together and move along together as one country and one people. Thank you.
Thank you, too. And the final submission will be from you, Akra Boachijan.
Thank you, the Chair. After Isaac has been both academic and polite and all that, as a soldier, I want to avoid that. Because as we say in our career, soldiers have low talents for ambiguities. Now, I will treat you as my commanders and do what I like doing best in the army. Brief you about my findings on ethnicity and Ghanaian politics tonight. It's a very simple issue. The impact of ethnicity on the leadership turnover in this country has been understated. Right from Nkrumah CPP, which many people don't realize, was led by a triumvirate of minorities from the coastal belt, Nkrumah and Zima, Bosio, Fanti, Bedema, Auna. It is the appeal of this triumvirate what was behind most of the success of Nkrumah. It is when the triumvirate started disintegrating and did disintegrate. Bedema went into exile, ran into exile, Bosio was kept, and the Zimas took over. This made it easier for Nkrumah to be overthrown in 1966. Enter National Liberation Council, led by Ankara Egan. It's a minority. He didn't last his term. Then Afrifa, a relatively junior military officer, substantive captain, and acting major, brigade major. The day after the coup, he had become a colonel. Then he moved on to brigadier, and from there zoomed to lieutenant general, and took over the reins of government in NLC. And significantly, he lasted in that office and handed over to Busia. Busia, as we have been told, hails from the Wanchi royalty and Brown Ahafu, so a minority again. He lasted only 27 months when Achampo took over on the 12th January 1972. Again, a minority. Then Achampo took over an Ashanti from the majority tribe until my friend came along, has served the longest in the military, 6 years. And then Akufu and others also came and removed him under the program of Unigov, which our friend has given a historical rendition. Akufu, from a minority in the eastern region, lasted only 1 year before we came along. And took over. We managed with a balanced ticket of an Ashanti, 3 Ewes, and a Bono minority. and succeeded in handing over after 4 months of our stipulated timeline. Liman took over. The thing about Liman that also is not often looked at is that he comes from a small tribe, Sisila, near the Burkina Faso border. It's a minority within the north itself. So he didn't have a chance. And if you look
he didn't have a chance. Because he didn't have a chance. He came from a minority.
He didn't have a chance because he was not a Dagomba. If the man was a Dagomba, the history of this country would have been different. Because the Dagombas are the dominant tribe in the north. And if you look at the young officers, the soldiers who took over, majority of them from the key major tribes in the north. Then, 1981, enter PNDC, led by my friend, Fry Lieutenant Rollins. Second time. And the interesting thing about him is that he lasted the longest, 10 years, as a military leader. Historians want to find out why that happened. All I can do is to brief you that he lasted longest as a military leader, then metamorphosed into a civilian leader in what I used to call the semi-detached NDC from PNDC.
He removed the P.
Because if you look at the leadership of PNDC and NDC, apart from dumping the uniform, nothing had changed. The next day. But the significant thing is that Mr. Rollins lasted 2 terms. Cool. After 8 years, he lasted another 2 terms. Then enter President Kufuor, an Ashanti majority. The interesting thing again is that he also lasted 2 terms. And then Mills walked in, waded in. Unfortunately, he was hassled to his early death.
I'm putting a pick up. Putting a pick up.
Was he?
And his first term, he was. Then came along J.D. Mahama, John Dramani Mahama, a minority Gonja from the north. Take note.
That is a mistake.
He won the 2012 election and thereafter, massive opposition. No president of this country has had his legitimacy challenged as long as in such intensity like Mahama. Labor was on the street throughout the remaining 3 years. But the important thing is that he lost the 2016 elections. So bundle out. Right? Because he was a minority. Then comes along my friend, President Akufo-Addo, another minority from the Achim tribe or group in the eastern region. Now the question that I keep on asking is that, can he buck the trend of 5 minorities ahead of him who never completed their term of office in this country? From Kroma to Mahama, no minority ever completed his term of office in this country. Prove me wrong. The only 2 people who have completed their terms are Rollins and Kufuor. They are majorities, tribes.
I don't accept it.
For me, that is not the issue. The issue is that instability has generated chronic underdevelopment for this country. And if we have to get over that, then something must replace the 1992 Constitution, which guarantees us stability but underdevelopment. The military, the in and out military regime, we don't need to discuss it. Right? So, I would, if something has to be done, I would recommend that we go for amendment of the Constitution to create a room for a coalition rule.
What rule?
I tried it in 1972. The politicians rejected it. But let me explain it briefly so that you see why I'm commending this to the ruling group and the political class in this country.
We probably will come to that.
First, okay.
So
what I've said that if we plan for a coalition rule, we can then have development in stability. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for complicating our political history lessons even further. But I want to thank the panelists for their submissions. They've all given us their versions of history. And I'm sure, as you all know, history is always contested, and feel free to contest the aspects that you disagree with when I come to the floor. However, I will start with the keynote speaker, asking my very first question, which is, in your presentation, you made the point, and I think that Wing Commander also, and I think even Her Excellency Nana Konadu also pointed to the fact that Nkrumah's government lacked that perception of ethnocentrism. So my question is, what do you think the mechanisms were? Although, of course, Major Boachijan is contesting that, yes. But I am saying that you explicitly thought that Nkrumah's government lacked the perception of ethnocentrism. So what do you think the mechanisms were that prevented that perception?
Well, my view is that Nkrumah had Ghana as his project. Ghana. That was what Nkrumah was looking at. And those who remember, I'm sure Ambassador KB Asante will remember, one of the first things Nkrumah did in 1957 or 58 was to pass legislation in Parliament banning all political movements which were based on tribal lines and religious lines. There was the Muslim Youth Association, there was the National Liberation Movement, there was the Ganshifimope, and there were other, then the Transvolta Togoland Congress. See, all these were either regionally based or tribally based, and they were proscribed under a law which passed through Parliament. And this forced, these other groups to merge into the United Party, in opposition, of course, to Kwame Nkrumah. So clearly, Nkrumah's agenda was that if we wanted to move our country forward, then ethnocentrism has to be something we put aside. I feel that was one of the things that Nkrumah did, which inured to the benefit of the country. Also, I think that Nkrumah's big agenda, the agenda for the freedom of the continent, also consumed a lot of the time Nkrumah himself spent in running this country. He was running this country as a model for others to follow. And that model meant that we had to move together as a united country. This is the way, I believe, a united country. He was running this model as an example for other African countries, which he himself could see would also become independent in due course.
Okay. Do any of you want to feed into that, or can I ask my next question?
I want to say something.
I'd just like to add that in addition to what the keynote speaker said, is the point that I made earlier, that the British, in their own big agenda, tried to move people in directions where they would not be working within their ethnic groups. So by the time or turn of independence, it worked to the benefit of Dr. Nkrumah, even as he had the bigger agenda of making us into one country.
Okay. Major Washijan is going to, because you had a different point of view.
On that issue, I would like to remind us here that Nkrumah's CPP was founded on the agenda of the common man, the Veranda Boys, who had more something in common, in solidarity, than the elitist groups from Achim, Asante. Remember, NLM was formed by the chief linguist of Asante Hine. You understand? Therefore, its popular appeal was limited, less than Nkrumah's Veranda Boys, which was lower majority of our people.
Okay.
That's where the appeal came from.
Bradley,
Yes, you realize that when you look at the northern regions, every time I hear the MPP say the Northern People's Party was a pressure group. And that pressure group was actually out there fighting for all the things that they felt they had lost out during the colonial time when Ghana wanted independence. And therefore, there was a need for education, all the infrastructure, the health, and everything else. And that's how come we had the scholarships and all that. Now, in getting this amalgamation of ethnic groups from all the three northern regions at that time, which was just one northern region, it meant that they had come together as one to support the CPP. And then also, Kwame Nkrumah coming from a minority tribe meant that he found something in common with them, as against the Akans, who were from the southern side, and who, to their minds, were elitist. They were better educated, and they took all their labor from the north. So there was that feeling of togetherness and belongingness, actually, with the other minority tribes along the coast. And that's how Kwame Nkrumah was able to keep the ethnicity down, of course, with the modernization of schools and all that. And he himself married an Egyptian. It opened up for other people to intermarry from other regions in this country. And I think it all helped us.
Okay. One of the things that I've heard said about why it is that, ethnocentrism, particularly in the olden days, as we say, was kept at bay was our boarding school system. But I didn't hear any of you talk about what boarding school brings to the table in terms of forging unity across different ethnic groups. Do you want to respond to that? Yeah. I'll start with you, Wing Commander.
It might have existed in some schools, but Achimota was special. Achimota was special in the sense that, I said earlier, tribal drumming. I remember I came to the school, and at the time Chapman was coming, the first Ghanaian headmaster. We were practicing dancing, other tribal groupings. And I was dancing at Doha with the Ashantis. And suddenly, somebody held my ear. And when I turned around, it was Behu. What have I done? And says, your name sounds and never names. What are you doing with the Ashantis?
Philip Behu, you mean?
Yes.
Philip Behu. Yes.
And he didn't let go of my ear until he pulled me to where the heavens were. And I couldn't speak any word in heaven. I couldn't speak. I didn't understand. I didn't speak a word. So the next tribal drumming session, he came and saw me hanging around and spoke to me never. I said, sir, I don't understand it. And he said, no, maybe you should belong to a gang group. Go to the gang. So I ended up dance with the guns, and I would say I was a good dancer for them too.
I was hoping you would say you learned how to dance Agbaja when you were through with the Ever group.
I'm sure Kunedu also learned.
That's a good contact.
You see a lady doing Agbaja Founders Day. We all learned how to do that. But you see, the tribal drumming, the missionary schools tried to stop. I think they felt it was, I don't know, but maybe Amo also has some effect, that Africanization, why would they? That tribal drumming. Why they tried to push it off, Achimota kept it. That what I got us together as one people. I don't know if I've answered.
Well, yes, but I'm sure other people have contrary views. Let me come to you.
I don't have a contrary view, but I think the whole concept of tribal drumming in Achimota was to enable us appreciate
Each other.
what other ethnic groups were doing. You know, so if you were in the, you know, I could never do the Adwa, I never learned. But I would follow them and be clapping and all that, you know. And that was the essence of it. And it's something which still remains. When you go to Founders Day, you find the various ethnic groups. And the rhythm of the Agbaja dance is something anybody can enjoy if you put your mind to it. It's a, you know. So that is where I learned to appreciate the other dances. Or they were doing the damba, you know, the northern group was doing the damba. It's something you appreciate. So I think really what Achimota did for us is for us to have a bigger world view. It's not only me and my tribe, but there are other people there. Also, the boarding school system was such that the person who was sleeping next to you could be anybody, you know, anybody from anywhere. And it didn't matter what your father was, poor or rich. It didn't matter. What mattered was that he was your mate and he was next door. If his gari got finished, he will come and ask you, you know. And you see, that's brought a certain cohesiveness, you know, amongst us. And today, many of our year groups, you know, they meet and they pat each other's back. You know, they've become friends. They become like brothers and sisters. You know, when you see your year group meet, you start talking. And even those, perhaps even not your year group, but the generation, you know. I saw a lady just a minute ago, and I was telling my wife, this lady must be Shome Douna. She was my prefect, you know, many years ago when I was a little boy, you know, just entering Achimota. So I noticed that, you know, yes, she's over there. So that's how Achimota is, you know. It brings people of all tribes together as well.
Okay, Rodney, you want to say something?
I think that the boarding school system brought us all together. But it will surprise you to know that the perceptions that we had came from home. It's the parents that normally would tell people off. I'm saying this because years after I left school, someone called me and said, you know what, I admired you so much in school. But when I mentioned you to my parents, it was like, wow, she's from the north. You know? So it's like, and I had people sleeping next to me who would turn around and say, Hausa Cheme, and I'll give them a big knock, you know, to remind them that one is lying here. You know, it even got to a stage where I had to organize to take some home with me one midterm. I actually organized and took some of them home with me just to let them know that I'm not any different. You know, and there was always that thing about, but you don't look northern. And I asked, how does a northern person look? You know? And when you drop down to 69, I think in my year group, maybe I was the only northern girl. So I was unique because there were many and I was just me. But I didn't feel any different. I didn't. It's just that sometimes when you meet their parents, it's like, oh, you're from the north. you know, that kind of thing. To the extent that even my geography mistress, having taught me for 5 years, when I was leaving, asked me, so when are you going back? And I said, going back where? And she thought I came from, I probably came from Somalia or somewhere. You know, and I said, so I just said, I'm a Ghanaian. So that's how it is. But I think the boarding school system really helped, because otherwise it would have been a different story.
Yes, yes, quite. I am going to turn to another issue that Accra Isaac Osei mentioned in his keynote address, and it's to provoke a fight between you and him, because he said that, you know, there were factions, both you and Wing Commander Sokbojo have talked about how the army was very integrated and it's perhaps a model of ethnic integration, although he did say that at a certain point the AFRC was divided along ethnic lines.
Yeah.
You are not going to escape responding to that, are you?
No, that's not my style. It's true, but it's only because the army became an instrument of politics, which was not set out to do. Politics is a divisive enterprise. And when it creeps into the army, it leaves its impact. But otherwise, if we are being organized to go and kill or be killed, there's a solidarity, you know, that binds us to do that job. But when you bring politics in, it becomes a different matter altogether.
Okay. So your answer is that it's politics
Yes.
Politics
that pollutes
yes.
the purity of the
Army.
military cohesion.
yes.
Okay. Does anybody have a contrary view?
I would say yes, what is said to a certain extent, but at large, we try to keep the military intact as possible. Because when you have divisions within the military, it's always dangerous. If we even talk about the AFRC, much as people identify Rawlings as an Evan, I don't think he gave them any special place within the military. Promotions and things went on, not because you are an Evan. It was given to you if you're due. So the military was largely kept intact. If you hadn't done that, I mean, say I decided I wanted to leave and I went, not because of that issue, but it's been kept up to today in that form, that no other tribe feels superior to the other.
Although there are ethnic stereotypes that say that gay people like to make coups.
I wasn't here, but I came to meet a week of it. You know, it tried to come out, but it was suppressed.
But it's back.
It tried to come out because he's our man. So whatever he does, we support him.
Right.
But I don't think he allowed himself. Honestly, I never heard Jerry speaking ever. So why do you not identify him as your hero and you want to be with him? But this issue was suppressed, that it didn't come out. I don't think he allowed it to permit the fabric of the military.
Accra, Nana Kone, did you have any insights into this matter, particularly considering that Accra, this is all on the record. I'm picking up from what was said. Accra Isaac Osei said that there was a perception that there was an Anglo mafia that supported.
I think that the perception was there. The perception was there because of civilians from outside, always talking about the Jelukope mafia. And, but I agree with Wing Commander on his issues, because until recently, I didn't even know my husband could speak Ewe properly. But now he has really learnt it and he's doing well with it. And even dancing the Agbaja. But what Accra is saying is true, because his first reaction to speak to anybody would be in English. If he felt that he couldn't explain himself properly to a group, his next language would be Tree. His broken Tree. Or Ghana, yes, Ghana,
Ghana.
thank you. Also Ghana. So it was a perception, but it grew. The perception grew until I remember that at some point they had to list the number of Ewes who had positions in his government, list the number of Fantis who had positions, list the number of the northern group that had positions, and list the number of Ashantis who, have I said Ashantis? Yeah,
No.
Akans who had positions. And it was clear that they were in a minority.
Which brings us to a very
I mean,
important...
the Ewes were in a minority.
Yes, a very important point that we need to address, which is how does one deal with the perception? Because even though you say perception mimics reality, she's just said that perception during the NDC time when it was seen as an ever government did not mimic the reality. When you stacked it all up, the Evers were in the minority. So I'll start with you, keynote speaker. How do we deal with that perception?
You see, it is very important in dealing with a situation like this through the actions. You see, through the actions of leaders, political leaders, we would know where they stand on these matters. If a political leader takes an action which affects the generality of the people, then one would not perceive any bias or favoritism for one group or another. If you listen to my conclusion very carefully, I was trying to make the point that if I have advanced in politics, it is not because I was from a certain tribe. It must be because of other reasons. That is the point that I was making. When I talked about perception mimicking reality, if you go through what I said, I was saying that in the realm of politics, when people, for example, in this country see or think that people in a particular government are corrupt, or that it is only a perception of corruption. We have seen in this country people coming up. I remember, I think it was at the end of Kufuor's regime, when a whole list of people who had amassed so much wealth, and when this was totaled, the wealth of the top, I think, 15 people or so, we realized that what was there, the whole banking sector of Ghana did not have that kind of money. So, obviously, as much as possible, I think it is necessary for us to put the facts out, and don't let any group feel marginalized. It is the marginalization, especially of the minorities in this country, which has created, a lot of problems for us. But now that I have the floor, let me suggest to Major Boachijan that the Gonjas are not a minority tribe.
They're not.
In fact, along with the Dagumbas and the Mampusis, they are the three biggest tribes in the north, and the Kokomas as well. They are all over. The Gonjas are all over, even in Bonha, your own region.
Yes, everywhere.
If you come to Kintampo, Techiman area, there are a lot of Gonjas over there. And then also, you refer to another group also at Sisera.
The Achims,
I don't see how you can call the Achims a minority tribe. If you are actually looking for a minority tribe in the, and perhaps you say the Krobos.
The Krobos.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Achims cover what? 9 constituencies, 3 groups of Achims, Bosume, Ebuakwa. So they are not a minority tribe. So what you are predicting will not happen to Akufo. Will now to again.
So that's what was right.
You have been debunked,
Yes.
and I'm not sure I'm ready for you to answer yet. But I did wonder whether Accra Rodlin or Accra Pasobojo would, again, picking up from the issue about perception, should we begin head counting to make sure that we have a federal character? In other words, oftentimes people are counting and saying, you see, there are 5 Evers here, how about 10? And so if Accra Isaac Osei would have been the most qualified person for this next position, they will say, no, there's too many Ashantis in there. Should we start to count? Should politicians start to count? Is that what we're suggesting here?
I think that sometimes we can't always say that perception, it's not real. Because in certain circumstances, it is actually a fact. Minorities are often so marginalized that you sometimes ask yourself, am I Ghanaian? You understand? Sometimes there comes a time when you sit back and ask yourself if you're Ghanaian, especially when you drive through this country. As soon as you go past the Ashanti region and you're hitting the northern regions, I ask my people, I say, why did we even join this whole Ghana thing? Yes, sometimes. Honestly, because if I look at the water that they drink and I look at the schools that they go to and I look at the hospitals that we have, and then I come back and I look at the number of people who migrate to come to the cocoa farms, who migrate to go to the Obuasi to work in the gold mines and all that, I see their inputs. And then I look back to where they come from, and it's the same. I mean, if I go home, I left home maybe some 40, 45 years ago, I go and it's still the same. How I saw the street is exactly how the street is. So where's the development? So how do I count myself as being part of this country? So unless our leaders kind of like bring some form of equity when it comes to resource management so that we can all benefit from whatever this country has to offer, we will always have people feeling left out, feeling marginalized, and therefore it will fuel other perceptions. When we talk about employment, for instance, a lot of people will say, well, you've got your fair share. The Mahama administration, the perception was that Northerners were given a lot of positions, Northerners had a free go and all that. But that was not true. For us in the North also, we were saying that Guans were the ones who had it. And by Guans, we're talking from Karachi, those from the East, everywhere else that you can find Guans. Because I'm from the Upper East region, and I'll go to Upper East and they say, nobody got anything. You go to the Northern region, and that's how come. You see, the 2016 election opened out a different ball game for us to realize that it's no longer that ethnic Volta being a power, World Bank for the NDC, and Ashanti being a World Bank for the MPP. We've come to the realization that our people are beginning to ask for something more than just that ethnic association. And therefore, this time round, even Upper West, voted for the MPP. You would normally not find Upper West voting for, in the Northern region or Upper West region, voting for the MPP, which they perceive to be an elitist political party. So I think that the perceptions are there. Some of them are real, but all we have to do is to be transparent. We have to be transparent. And we have to have the political will also to sometimes be honest with the people. You've got to be honest. You've got to be able to tell the people as it is, instead of trying to move things in a certain direction, knowing very well that that is not going to help anybody. It's transparency and the political will to change things.
Okay. I'm about to open this up to the floor because I think it's about time to get input from members of the audience. I encourage you to briefly tell us who you are, and I encourage non-Accras particularly to join in the conversation because this is a national conversation and not just for Achimota School. But before I do that, I just want to once more acknowledge our sponsors, Liberty, and also Star FM. We're live on Star FM. So I'll open the floor for the audience to either make comments or contributions very succinctly so we can hear as many voices as possible, or ask questions that the panelists can address.
Audrey, I'm here.
Okay, and you have the mic, so.
Accra Akosua Pebi is my name. I'm a historian. There are three things which we should think about, which we cannot finish tonight. I'm looking at the role of history in all this. And one, remember that before colonial rule, we were in our various groups. Intact understanding, cultural links, religious links and ties. Ghana before colonial rule is a different picture. I'm worried about labeling. Who decides who is a minority? Who decides, who says minority, majority? So who decides that? Which in history has not been part of our system. Think of the effect of colonial legacy on us as well. And I'm sitting and I'm saying, we need to learn more of our history so that some of the pronouncements we make will be more valid. Remember that the British decided that we should have indirect rule, which meant that they looked at the chiefs as the system. They forgot that there were non-centralized states. A lot of the states, they don't have chiefs. They have the Tendana or they have Wolome. So what do you do with them? So if you're going to emphasize the chief. So the colonial legacy has also had its effects on us. And we need to think about it quietly.
If it gets to politics, can we say every one of here is neutral? As Gans or Fantis or Evers, or once we leave this place, we'll immediately take on those caps and begin to propound those theories. I think the speaking is enough. Let's begin to live like Ghanaians. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Normally, appointments are made upon whom you know. Even if you know the job, the best as is known, you will not.
And I'll start with you, Major Wachijan. Is there anything at all you want to say to conclude? It could be something, a point that was raised, or it could be something entirely different. You only have half a minute.
That's right. No, I need less than that. Now, so much has been made of boarding schools, but we forget that in this country, we have made ethnicity of boarding schools. I'll give an example in 1962, when Chapman and Eve, as a headmaster, was replaced by Ike Chinubwa and Nzima. There was a maximum commotion there because Nkrumah politically wanted to contain us. So what I'm saying is that ethnicity, it is a very elastic thing, and we've got to be very careful how we use it. That's why I was going to talk about coalition rule that will bring all of us together and develop this country in stability. That's what I would like to say, because ethnicity takes many forms. It's not only just the ethnic. And somebody asked a question about who is a Ghanaian. Mm-hmm. Well, it's clear that when the colonial boundaries were drawn, most Zimas were left behind the other side. The bonus, our kingdom, is Bonduku. The Evers, their tribes stretching from Badagry to the gates of Accra. You know, so who is a Ghanaian is a very difficult question to ask. And we have to look at all these things and see how best we can weld us as a people to develop. That's what I have to say.
Thank you. Wing Commander?
Well, from what the young man said, what effect does it have on his future plans as a program? We have to talk about it. We have to find ways, minimize it or eradicate it. You might be surprised by the time you finish school and you put your CV to look for a job, this ugly head might still be there. You are from here, you are this and that. And the guy sitting on it will say, we don't want you because you are not from my tribe. Oh, sorry, not tribe, from my group. So it's worth talking about it now, and we'll try and kill it if we can. Then your future will be bright. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Rodlin?
Who's a Ghanaian? I have always battled with it. But the major thing is, as a northern person, I sometimes ask myself, who is the northerner? Because there is another constituency that is benefiting from us as northern Ghanaians. And that is migrants who have stayed in this country for so long that they are Ghanaians. Our positions are being given to those migrants. And as a northern person, that is something that we worry about. When I see the list of people going to medical school or to the law school, and I see those names, I see Islamic names, and those Islamic names automatically are presumed to be Northerners. Not all Northerners are Muslims, and not all people bearing Islamic names are Muslims. So at the end of it all, scholarships that should go to Northerners are given to people with Islamic names who do not know Tamale, let alone Bolgatanga, but then they take our scholarships. And this is one thing that I would want for us as Achimotans also to look at, because it's one of the factors that is affecting the North, the underdevelopment. Because if you get somebody who has lived all his or her life in Accra, doesn't know how we go picking share nuts, doesn't know how we travel miles to get water, and that person gets to be a member of parliament and takes my slots as a minister, and I don't benefit, no village benefits, then that becomes a problem. Okay. So what I suggested was, if you don't come from Ghana, but you migrated, or your grandparents migrated from northern Nigeria, Niger, Chad, Mali, wherever, and you're living within Ghana, most probably in the Zongo communities, you must adopt a Ghanaian village to be your own, so that you can go back there and also contribute your quota. That's mine.
Interesting idea. Yes.
Thank you very much. I would like to take a different position on the whole issue, because Achimota was teaching us to,
Don't worry about it.
Achimota was teaching us to coexist with each other and be able to work within the country as one. That's why they talk about the black and white keys, that all may be one, and so on. They're not saying that we should throw out our ethnicity. They're not saying that we should not be Fantis or Ewes or whatever. Right. But we are saying that when we are Ghanaians, maybe we have strong points from a Gonja, a strong point from an Ashanti. Let's bring our strengths together. We're not talking about getting rid of who we are, because we can't. We have to accept who we are and then be able to bring down the nuances that make us, some believe that we are more important than others, and then bring up the areas that will help us to have a cohesive situation in our country, and that will make us grow better and make us into a better country. I do not think that we can erase who we are. I think it's important for us to be who we are, but be able to be together as a nation. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you. And the final word will come from the keynote speaker.
Well, thank you, Audrey. I just want to say that, like in Sarawiwa, ethnicity is fact. You are born into a tribe. There's nothing to be ashamed of by being a Gan or an Ewe or whatever. There's nothing to be ashamed of. What you should be ashamed of is to think that you are better than somebody by virtue of the fact that you are from this tribe or another. That is what we mean by ethnocentrism. So my main thesis really is that because we form opinions or we have perceptions as a result of the different experiences that we have in our own life. Because of that, it is possible that for the same set of facts, people may have different perceptions and therefore different realities, when in fact there's only one reality. That is the problem that we face. So I believe that going forward, what we really need, and also to answer what the young people were saying, what we need is an environment in this country which enables each individual to realize his goals, which enables each individual, irrespective of his ethnicity, to attain the goals that he has set for himself. So long as there is a field in which all of us can operate fairly, I'm quite sure that this country will be. To answer the question of who is a Ghanaian, my good friend Isaac Osei is a Ghanaian. Thank you.
And on that note, I'd like to thank our panelists and our keynote speaker. You've given us a real treat of an evening. And I'd like to invite the chairman to come up and give his closing remarks. Thank you all very much.
If we are making progress, we shall find that more and more of us are becoming Ghanaians. Perhaps very soon you won't know whether it's an Ahanta or Fanti or whatever it is. And I am a Ghanaian. How else can you get somebody with the name Asante being president of Ghana for so many years? Now, to solve this problem, we have to visit the past, see how far we've come. I mentioned boarding schools. They've done a lot, and I'm very sorry that we stopped having them. I think we should have more of them. It happened when I was involved because one country gave us money, and one of the conditions was that we shouldn't have boarding schools because boarding has nothing to do with education, which is nonsense, of course, in our circumstances. Now, because before I went to Achimota, anybody from the north was not good enough. After Achimota, in my final year, in our time, I don't know what you do now, but we elect the senior prefect. And in my final year, I campaigned to make Imo Regala senior prefect from the north. It wouldn't have happened if I had not gone to Achimota. Now, we have made progress, and we are still making progress. Now, unfortunately, our politicians, when they don't have any ideology, any philosophy, then dwell on ethnicity, fund ethnicity to get votes. I believe that politics is a serious business. In our time, by the time I left Achimota in 1942, if you had not read the Grammar of Politics by Harold Lasky of the London School of Economics, then you were not educated in politics as such. And then we become ministers, and we don't know what we are about. So, now, Kwame Nkrumah was mentioned. He did not fund the ethnicity garbage because he was a rare politician. He had a philosophy. In fact, I got to work in his office because one weekend, his great friend, George Padmore, and I, far away from Ghana, solve all the problems of Ghana and Africa from 2:45 in the evening to 8:45 in the evening to 3:30 in the morning. We solve all the problems over a bottle of whiskey. I'm not advising the young to do it. Now, and what did we discuss? So when Nkrumah heard it, he said I should come to his office. Then I went there. And he didn't ask me where I came from. It was a question of doing things and getting somebody who can do them. We talked about political philosophy. He used the word ideology. I believe there's something in it, although that also was prosecuted by even some of his followers. But you must have a higher purpose in politics. Otherwise, you degenerate. And then you find ethnicity, because that's the easiest way of getting supporters. And so I would suggest that we should follow Ambassador say. He's not sure what he is. You see, now we have made progress, and sometimes we do not regard the progress highly. When Chapman Yaho, those of you married Ifwa Kwashi Efanti, that weekend I went to Accra, and when my mother saw me, first thing she said was, "Many musunya Achimota being pane." And I went to Fanti do need Jeshia. I never marrying a Fanti who was wed from a good home. Now, this was not long ago. You can see I can still walk, so I'm not that old. It was not long ago. And marriages between different groups was unheard of. Now we have many, and I will say, let's continue. Let us cut across all these ethnic divisions. And Achimotans have led, and let them continue to lead the way in this progress. We make progress when we are brothers and sisters of people from Gambaga to Accra, from University of Kita. And we help the country to develop properly that way. The problem of ethnicity, in my opinion, is an aberration. It's something which has cropped up because some of our leaders have no philosophy or no other views. We can move forward. It doesn't matter whether you're a socialist or what you believe in private enterprise. You must have a philosophy to back it up, and you must believe in it and follow it up. Either of them can make this country great and strong, provided it is genuinely applied by those who believe in it. And that was what we had at the beginning. We should learn our history. We've had a bird's eye view, but we should go further and find what happened. Nkrumah, then the military government, and so on. And each one had a lesson for us. And that is why we are still together. There's no civil war. We've passed through a lot. You see, I think my sister there was talking about history. You are a historian, I suppose. Oh, no. Unfortunately, we stopped teaching history. I was taught history by really great men like Miguel Rabero, William Ofrata, who was always very seditious. And he made me doubt what our politicians were doing, and in much later life, what he himself was doing. But we were lucky to have these men to teach us. I'm sure we still have great men and women who can lead this country forward and make it great and strong, not by stories about building roads, building schools, and without any plan. So that eventually we find ourselves bankrupt and we take money from other people, and because of that, they tell us what to do. We shall never progress in this way. We must be our own masters. We must live on what we have. We must use the people we have. And we cannot use all the people we have when we allow where the person comes from to be a factor. So I thank you all and for coming here tonight.
Thank you very much for ending this very lively discussion on such a positive note, Mr. Chairman. And let me thank you, the audience, for being very participatory, very great audience to have. I think we've all enjoyed it. So thank you very much.